Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Scump and FormaL sharing some interesting remarks, certainly after the difficult weekends that OpTic, Texas had in Burbank, but also lots of discussion on Atlanta FaZe. How is it again? They're making a grand finals and eventually falling short. What could be the reasons behind this consistent collapse? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. 4 majors this year. This was Major 1. This was Major 2 in Miami that FaZe took the victory at. Major 3 was OpTic, of course. And then most recently, it's the New York Subliners. No fans, unfortunately. Had the cage in the grand finals. It was pretty cool. Drill's getting cut out here, so let me just give him his props. There he is, at least, on the main screen. And yeah, I love the different colours as well. It's maybe not a shame, precisely, but the Subliners as an organisation have done so many cool things in COD over the last few years. They've delivered championships, they've delivered great results, and yet they're probably going to disappear, right? Like, Cloud9 are coming in, so whether it's just going to be Cloud9 or the New York, like, Cloud9ers, or I don't know what they're going to do exactly, but they've got some ideas, I'm sure, up their sleeve there for next season, and obviously Cloud9 was celebrating big time this result, as we'll see here in just a couple of seconds. There was a comment actually from Slasher, the games have been kind of weird. I do think that there is always something about that, right? When there's no fans, things do feel a little bit more strange than they usually can on a main stage, and you get some results maybe are somewhat unexpected, but at the end of the day, you know, the teams that made the finals were the 2 best teams in the tournament as it stood, and Subliners were the winner after that crazy losers run at playing the best COD of the day. Would they be able to replicate that in a different environment? I think possibly yes. I mean, they've done it before in front of a crowd, won the World Championship in front of a crowd, and of course they're going to try and do so again. Scrappy's birthday as well, so yeah, unfortunate result in many ways for those guys, and they've got a lot to think about, right? Because in the same way that OpTic have to think about exactly how they were able to come in after winning Major 3, basically crash out during the qualifiers and then lose to Miami game 5 round 11 to bow out of the tournament with some just poor search and destroy, bad decision making again and again. Toronto have to think about, okay, how are we consistently getting slammed in these finals? Or not even just finals, but just, let's say, the final day, the championship Sunday. Ultra again come into the Sunday and they just get slammed out top 4. So in some way, I feel like it can almost be a bit more concerning for Ultra, because at least OpTic kind of know where they are. Whereas Ultra are like, well, where really are we, right? They made a good losers run to get to top 4 at least, but then they fell short, and Subliners were the ones that made the run on the other side of the bracket instead. And they got smoked by Gorillas day 1, which of course was very ugly indeed. So I think even Ultra will be, I wouldn't say more concerned than OpTic, but definitely they're going to know they're going to need to grind hard. But let's talk about some of the comments on FaZe, because this tweet was going around, not meant to be a hateful tweet, but Drazah was brought onto this FaZe roster to be their missing piece, which is what they say every year. Like when FaZe make a change, they always talk about, well, they don't always talk about, but the community talks about it, right? You know, maybe this is the piece that's going to go with the trio to make them as good as possible. And let's be real, Drazah's been great for FaZe this year. Like certainly in the last couple of stages, there's been times where Drazah's arguably been their best player, right? But the issue is, again, they turn up to a grand finals and the ice doesn't really seem to be there. They've had Arcetes, they've had Slasher, they've now had Drazah, and there's been moments in every single one of those seasons where they've looked really, really good. But then still, you know, in the finals, and I mean, even if you guys remember ESL or E-League actual major Boston 2018 that Cloud9 famously won after the 15-11 comeback on Inferno against FaZe in the grand finals there to then win the overtime. And I mean, look, that was a famous moment for North American esports. And look again, FaZe, it's not like FaZe crumbled in this grand finals considering the circumstances. Like they, you know, they didn't get whitewashed or they didn't have a massive lead and blow it, but they nonetheless did lose in a pretty comfortable way. So this is the debate, and as Slasher even says, I feel like I've seen this script somewhere before, because last year for FaZe in New York, it was actually a pretty similar thing. What happened in, of course, it was Toronto, right? Major 5 last season, and then of course the World Championship, FaZe fell short in 3rd, and it was Toronto in the finals there, the New York won again. So Slasher is kind of feeling that there is something in this. But for all the talk about FaZe, and look, I said it, right, that I thought this FaZe team was better than the Cold War FaZe team. And I do genuinely think that in terms of their peak levels, I think that could well be true. Back in Cold War, the competition that FaZe had, I don't think is as strong as it was today. And during that season, they were very good and they won lots of finals. Of course, Arcetes was very much a part of that. But after they moved on from him, of course, they've made many more finals since then. And still, the results are, well, not even as good as the Cold War season. look, as I say, I don't think the competition in the Cold War year was as strong as it is today. So maybe it's understandable why some of these results are starting to come through, but still, it's a big talking point that, again, they're making loads of finals and it's not actually working out in their favour, as we've seen over the last couple of tournaments. But frankly, to be in the conversation with Cold War FaZe, even if when they're playing their best COD with Drazah, maybe online, maybe in early rounds of tournaments, they look just unstoppable, they're not going to be in that conversation if they don't at least win the World Championship now. Simp, aBeZy, Cell, look how many kills they have in grand finals. Like, this just goes to show how often FaZe make finals. Like, they've made, I mean, look at all the kills. 2,000 plus kills for Simp, aBeZy and Cell in grand finals. Nobody else, I mean, some of these guys aren't even at 1,000. But Kenny and Priestahh have more championship wins in the CDL, or at least I think they have the same. I think they might have more than Simp and aBeZy and Cellium do. So, you know, Priestahh, I think, has joint maybe with Kenny now the most wins in the CDL in terms of, you know, LAN victories. Simp, aBeZy, Cell, I think, are maybe one behind. But yet they have more than double the kills, like almost nearly triple the kills of, let's say, Kenny or Priestahh in grand finals, because, you know, they just aren't efficient when they get to grand finals. There's also talk about Surge, just because the last couple of years, they had Octane, he left and won champs. They had Pred, he left and won an event. They had Sib, he left and won, you know, another event as well. So I don't know if there's too much in that. It's just the reality is that Surge have made some decent decisions in terms of players they signed because they had the money to do so, but not too many good decisions to be made after that. Just quickly though, before we finish out on the FaZe thing, I suppose, what is it, right? I talked about the comms yesterday, that I feel like that's a bit of a weakness for them. Is it just a mentality thing? I know that some people were suggesting, and maybe understandably, that let's say you make a grand finals of a tournament, are they playing a different style of COD? Are they playing a bit more reserved? Are they not playing confident enough? I mean, I just don't really know if that's the explanation, because Simp earlier in the weekend was just full of confidence, saying that they're going to slam everyone, they were looking unstoppable, and it felt probably that was going to be the case at the time. But of course, again, they make a grand finals, and it just does not quite happen. So yeah, there's so many potential explanations, but it's just, we're having this conversation after like almost every tournament at this point. How come they keep falling short despite looking so good in the run towards the actual event itself? Yes, they lost that series to Toronto Online, but you know, there was the high-rise control barrel cheese, which arguably cost them that game 3. So even that could have been a very different story in the end. This is though, of course, Scump. It was his birthday yesterday, turned 29. Thought it was, this is pretty funny to be fair for Bose, reporting live from Italy, Battle Eats and Basler, and yeah, the breakdown reply was good. This comment though, I mean, what do we think about this, right? Just FormaL says, happy birthday, brother, we take over soon. So not necessarily there's anything in this COD related, but I thought it was worth at least discussing, right? Because, look, FormaL wishing Scump happy birthday, FormaL knows full well that, well, his year in Halo, his time in Halo competing is probably coming to a close right about now, right? After the World Championship this year, FormaL is likely going to call it a day in Halo. He's made that quite clear publicly. That is the general theory about the situation. So if FormaL does call it a day, what's next, right? And there's been some debate on this. I think Scump has been quite clear that, you know, returning to COD is not on his agenda really, but he did say, Scump, that if FormaL was to do it, he would at least, Scump, have to consider the return. And that's when FormaL says, we take over soon. This can be one of two things. Either it's just, you know, a comment for engagement. The other option is that he's kind of looking from a content angle and saying, wow, okay, Scump and I could be an absolute force in the content department if we really tried. And maybe there's part of him that's saying, you know what, could we come back as a duo again? Could T2P return? Certainly given the recent results of OpTic Texas, right? This has just been a bit of a debate. Obviously, it depends what happens at the World Championship, right? And it wasn't long ago that OpTic showed they are very much so capable of making a big run on a championship Sunday and winning it. But obviously, in hindsight, you can look back at that Major 3 tournament in Toronto and say, okay, yes, OpTic played unbelievable COD on the Sunday, but the rest of the weekends, how good really did they play, right? Were they actually on top form for the rest of the weekends? Not really. Like, I went into Sunday not expecting OpTic to win that tournament, right? They had to make the losers run to continue it, and that's eventually, of course, what they did. But the other days of the tournaments, they were scraping wins against Surge, against Miami, stuff like this, and then they really came to play on the Sunday. So, you know, it's maybe lightning in a bottle or whatever. Like, they got it once. Can they get it again? That is a question. But, of course, top 12 wasn't ideal. Now, the World Championship, they'll play Gorillas round 1, a team that just came 3rd. So, of all the first round games, because Toronto play Thieves, New York Subliners play Surge, and then FaZe play Miami, the results of those teams top 6, top 8, right, in the end, whereas Guerrilla's top 3. So, you know, maybe not ideal for OpTic. And if OpTic were to bow out very early on, they would almost have to consider, at the very least consider, but probably just straight up make a roster change. Would that involve Scump and FormaL returning? You know, I don't really think so, but it's something to at least have a look at. I did mention this earlier on today, and I thought it was worth continuing on the story actually on Skyz, because HyDra has now won plenty of grand finals, but New York's record in grand finals is just really good, especially when you compare it to FaZe. Skyz has won his last 7 grand finals. Now, this also includes home series victories in 2020, so when he was with Florida Mutineers during those couple of seasons, or that, yeah, well, okay, one season in 2020 where they actually won, and then the next season where they weren't quite as good. But during, even counting that period, he's won 7 finals in a row, which actually ties. So Skyz joins, and maybe you don't count those home series, right? Maybe fair enough. But it's a very exclusive club of players that have won 7 grand finals appearances in a row. And that's Scump and FormaL, right, of the OpTic dynasty. So, you know, there's got to be something to be said on this, because it's not like Skyz played his best COD, I would say, the entire tournament. But, you know, guess what? He turns up to the finals, plays better, and they win it again. So I think that FaZe, they've got to be looking at stuff like this and taking some notes on exactly what they might need to think about. And, I mean, look, HyDra, 22 years old, 5-time champion, 2023 world champion and MVP, was of course MVP again of this event. I don't think I mentioned that earlier today, but again, HyDra was counted as the MVP of this one. Positive KD, 20 of 20 events, 71.4% win percentage in finals. Of course, he was on the Subliners team back in Cold War that weren't quite as impactful. Winningest player in the history of the Subliners as well, at least joint winningest, and early days. So yeah, HyDra won a player meta finals every year now. He's won an event again, and just such a deadly force. And this is again the talk about, like, Scump and FormaL, the T2P duo. If they're not going to make a change OpTic for Scump and FormaL, which, let's be real, that ain't going to be happening, but if they do want to make a change, surely HyDra would be the target that you look for, but the problem is he really accessible? That is a matter for debate. Most grand finals appearances, though, as a duo looks like this, because Scump and FormaL are at 27. Simp and aBeZy will have this record. Like, I think it is only a matter of time, especially because there aren't as many games in the CDL as they were, tournaments in the CDL as they were previously. So Simp and aBeZy having 24 grand finals appearances, very commendable, but equally their, you know, conversion rate of these, instead of being 60 to 70% like it is for most of these other duos, if not even higher, it's, you know, in the high 30s, low 40%. You know, they've converted 24 of those to, what, 9 victories? Something like that. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.
Pour some sugar on me.
Yeah, no.
Hey, Scrap. Hey, brother.
It's been a pleasure.
It really has, man. I'll tell you what, bro. You took me from a place that was very dark, twisted, sick, dirty, stinky. Just a place that is indescribable, man, and you let me stay there. And I'll always remember that, brother. You were so kind in so many terrible moments today. You tried to raise me up, brother, but I just couldn't reach your hand. I reached out and I said, Tarek, hand me anything. And you said, and you said, you's a bitch. And I said, Tarek, I love you, brother. I had a great day, man. I really appreciate you.
I don't even know what to say to him. This guy's on fucking Mars.
Humsey said, Nate Shot doesn't acknowledge non-subs. Fact. I tried my best not to, bro, but sometimes I see a message like that. I gotta respond to it. Gentlemen, it was a great day.
Yeah, this guy is so brain dead.